Learn how a confident leader can raise capital first and then buy the right company. How CEO Petros Kusmu got a win for Alpine Vistas Capital. On today's episode of the Executive Wins Podcast. Welcome to the Executive Wins Podcast, where senior leaders share their biggest wins so you can get inspired and grow your business. Here's your host, Gordon Shepherd. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Gordon Shepherd. And before I get started, I just want to take a moment to tell you about why I do what I do. My purpose is to empower senior leaders so they can grow themselves and their teams and ultimately optimize their entire organization. And then if they do this, they can serve their clients and community at the highest possible level. I do this through my work as an executive coach and trainer. And one of my favorite pieces of feedback I got after working 500 hours with one company was when the senior leader said, "Thank you so much for bringing the laughter back into the hallways." That is why I do what I do. It's also why I produce the Executive Wins podcast, so that leaders like you can get inspired by learning from experienced executives who share their biggest wins in business, so you can become an even better leader yourself. On today's episode, you'll learn how a confident leader can raise capital first and then buy the right company. How CEO Petros Kusmu got a win for Alpine Vistas Capital. But before we get started, I just want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by the Executive Wins Workshop. In this high-impact workshop, executive teams learn how to reverse engineer past wins in a structured way, so then they can get more wins in the future. This highly interactive session is for senior leadership teams who really want to improve profitability, processes, communication, and a whole lot more. I'll be your facilitator, bringing 25 plus years of experience and a proven system that you can learn to grow the overall results in your business. It's available in half-day, full-day, and customizable formats, and it's really good for team building and corporate retreats. There's also an in-depth version called a Wins Audit, and this is when I interview people from all levels of a company to find out how they get their wins. And then I deliver a summary to the executive team. And because I'm not in the family, the results are real. So if you're an executive who wants to find out how people in your company get their wins, and then also get analysis about whether or not those wins are aligned with your strategy, then visit executivewins.com/workshops to learn more. And now on to today's show. We are lucky to be joined by Petros Kusmu, the CEO of Alpine Vistas Capital, which is a company of committed entrepreneurs and investors who are dedicated to buying and growing exceptional privately held businesses in the USA and Canada. I really enjoyed doing this interview, and here's why you're going to love it too. Petros gives you the playbook on what it takes to build and lead an investment fund, from having a stomach of steel to creating FOMO, as in the fear of missing out when you are interviewing investors to join your cap table. It's a masterclass in confidence, focus, and the value of building strong relationships that align with your investment thesis. And before we get into it, I want to remind you that this interview follows a specific format that I created called The Anatomy of a Win, to help you learn the strategy, work plan, people, operations, and results behind every business win you hear on this show. I hope that you can use this approach to reach your next business milestone. And now here's Petros Kusmu with his executive win. Petros, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Well, it's so good to have you here because we're about to hear someone with a vision who isn't just talking about it. They're actually pulling off that vision and making things happen. And I'm just going to leave that in as a little preview so that people get hooked in and just sort of stick around because this is going to be a really good interview. But most of the people that are listening don't know you. So, if you're at a party and you had to introduce yourself, how would you introduce yourself? What would you say?
Great question. I think I would introduce myself by saying I'm a dog owner. I'm married. I love to snowboard, and I'm a musician as well. But if asked what I kind of do during the day, I would say that I'm the founder and CEO of Alpine Vistas Capital, where a group of investors and I are looking to make acquisitions in the private market to buy a business from a retiring owner and to help grow it and make it exceptional.
how lovely that we get just a few sentences from what takes decades in the making, right? You're obviously being eloquent about what that is. I mean to really sort of let people know, if we just saw the tip of the iceberg, there's a lot going on underneath there.
Yeah.
There's a journey to get here. I just want to set the stage a little bit. Take me back a little bit because there's pre-Alpine Vistas.
Yeah.
Give me a little bit of your pedigree in there, like some of your journey and sort of your key roles, briefly, and then that kind of gets us to sort of a moment where you make this, you turn this on.
Yeah, sure. So a little bit about myself. I'm from Edmonton, city of champions, and spent most of my life there. Grew up though in Northeast Africa for my teenage years. Came back, did my undergrad at the University of Alberta, and then was right after undergrad, was the CEO of an educational services organization, effectively our students' union at the University of Alberta, which is a full-time gig. It's a $13 million organization, 300 staff. We had 7 businesses. We opened one during my time there. We operate a whole building that we do, 10, double-digit, multi-million-dollar renovations on. We do a lot. So that was my real first kind of foray into entrepreneurship of sorts, right? It was just managing and helping steer a large organization and enterprise. Decided to, do graduate school in the UK, got a scholarship to do that. And after my time at the London School of Economics, came back to Edmonton, worked at a friend's tech startup, Instamec, helped them kind of scale nationally. And I figured I should cut my teeth somewhere just because, as much as I love my buddies at the startup and my previous role, there wasn't really direct mentorship. I'm kind of like, here's the way to be an ass kicker effectively and to kind of like work in a professional context. So I decided going to management consulting would be the best way of cutting my teeth and developing this kind of what we call that consultant toolkit. So I joined Monitor Deloitte, which is the corporate strategy group of Deloitte in Calgary. And that was the start of a nearly 7-year journey in management consulting. And I thought I'd stick around for a couple of years and do something else, but you progress within the firm, you get increasingly greater responsibilities and whatnot, and just interesting work and, doing work in New York, in Europe, all over Canada, the US, eventually transferred out to Vancouver, was a senior manager at the firm, helping lead and sell large digital transformations, and then decided to go back to graduate school. So had an opportunity where I just wasn't sure. I was trying to kind of figure out what the next big thing would be. And a lot of the not-for-profit work I was doing on the side, I was helping build up an affordable housing provider here in Vancouver. Kind of, I found myself saying I should really study a business degree at some point. I'm so plugged into the space. Was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to study at Harvard for my MBA. And that was an incredibly eye-opening experience. Just being there, it got bit by the entrepreneurial bug after spending a little bit of time in private equity and credit investing at Morgan Stanley in New York, and thought to myself, okay, let's start a fund myself. So, I had classmates of mine who were investors. I'd met investors during my time at Harvard, and they had liked me and I had liked them, and slowly but surely there was a belief implanted in me of like, hey, you can just kind of start your own fund, and you can use that to help finance, buying a business, a large business, and steering it towards even greater success. So that's kind of my journey to how I ended up to what I'm doing today.
Well, thank you for that detailed journey, because I know the snowboarding and the dog owning is, obviously a big part of it too, because you brought that up. But we can see
Yeah.
then somewhere in there, there's these moments where you were leading, you were following, you were studying,
Yeah.
and it sort of gave you, I'm going to say, you got to build up the confidence level of what it takes to kind of do what you're doing now, right? Because this is not for the lighthearted, I don't think, as we go to describe it. It leads us to this moment in the conversation, every conversation I'm in with folks like you, and I say, okay, so given up to this point, if you had to describe your biggest win in business in the last couple of years, then what would it be and how would you describe it?
Yeah. I mean, before even answering that, the point you brought up of just like, it's not for the faint of heart and building up that confidence, it just like really resonated with me because there's always still that sense of like, I feel like an imposter doing this sometimes. And I think you talk to most entrepreneurs, and there's always that general sense that actually a lot of people feel like they're kind of swimming outside of their depth. And going to business school and going to a place as entrepreneurial as Harvard was a big realization of like, oh, everyone feels this way, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like you could be here and everyone feels the same way, and that still doesn't stop the folks who, I went back to business school a lot older, but folks who are in their mid, early, late 20s having the gumption and confidence to think that they can do this, and they eventually do it and they become successful. And I say, why the hell not me? So I think to your point on confidence, um, that was really astute. And to answer your question of what
Well,
was,
and I'll just jump in there and say that's what I hear from many leaders, and I think it's amazing. There's something obviously persistent about going forward,
yeah,
right? So I interviewed Alvin Pike. Alvin Pike, the biggest loan he'd ever gotten was a mortgage. He raised $25 million to buy a screw pile business, got to $50 million in 3 years.
amazing, yeah,
Right. And you hear the story and you're just like, and when we had that conversation, and
yeah,
it wasn't like, and it was sort of his own enthusiasm and whatever. He's got his own sort of motivation along the way, but it wasn't easy.
yeah,
He had one of those, and sorry, I just mean to jump into that story. It's on another episode here, but he had a day where he had to present 2 hour meetings 5 times to 5 major banks, and he got term sheets and then turned down, and then had to go back at it for another year. You know what I mean? Like, so this is
yeah,
but underneath that, again, the leaders I'm meeting are often, I'm going to say, there's a humility to this that's probably necessary to be successful, I would think, to a certain degree. And thank you for being open, because that's the kind of thing that the listeners can hear and go, oh, right. I'm
yeah,
not supposed, I don't have to check all the boxes to be all confident to be a leader. I can be both uncertain and lead at the same time, I think is something that comes up as well. I know that other leaders I've met, certainly in the nonprofit space, for example, will talk about having mental health struggles and leading large organizations at the same time. So leaders are, I think, all of these things, if this is the fabric that sort of goes into it, and it's not certainly a all confident, all winning type of thing. So thanks for letting us know about that, because that's a reality that leads into the win.
yeah, yeah, for sure. In terms of my biggest business win, it feels like it's still yet to come. I'm gonna feel that way with our initial acquisition with this fund. But I'd say my biggest win to date has just been raising not only the fund, but being oversubscribed, meaning I had way more interest, way more investors interested in me that I could kind of handle with the kind of budget that we were raising. And
So there you are, you're done your thing. And you're
yeah.
able to walk around to some people and you're saying, I want to raise. Are you able to say the amount of money that you raised for your fund? You don't have to.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, the way it works with a search fund is, you're looking for just a modest amount. You're looking for less than $1 million just to kind of get an operating budget, a salary, have a team of sorts for the next 2 years or a period of
And
time where you're looking.
take me into this, because let's say you're going to raise this million, you're going to operate on a premise. And there's
Yeah,
something about the premise that you put together for your fund
yeah.
that people are investing in. So you're pitching, you're in a room with somebody, they've got some money. What did you say to them to hand over the dough?
Yeah, it's interesting because a traditional pitch to investors would be, I already have this interesting opportunity and I need X amount of $1 million, to actually acquire this and for you folks to have some shared ownership. I'm actually going a step up where I'm saying, I don't have the opportunity yet, but you can believe in me that I will actually find that opportunity. I'll then raise the money again from you, and that money will be in the range of 10 to 20 plus $1 million to actually acquire this business. And then you can trust that I'm going to do an amazing job running this business, and you folks will get a handsome return at the end of the day. So, it's even more of a daunting pitch because you're just trying to pitch them on the belief and faith that you're going to be amazing at this, and it's a bit unconventional, but yeah, that's effectively how the pitch worked.
Well, congratulations on the unconventionality of this,
Yeah,
because I think, again, there's something again in you that put together that string of time in your development, because you could have gotten into saying, oh, I've got the business, that just like
yeah,
you said, that typical thing. We found the business. I want to be whatever on the operational side, or you've got some skin in the game and then other people sort of back you. But you've just said, wait a second, I'm a backable horse.
yes, yeah,
And right, that's what you
that's
said.
exactly it.
And so what is it? Do they like your haircut? Like, what is it
Yeah.
about? What do they like about you? You think?
Yeah, so I'd say in this ecosystem of entrepreneurship through acquisition, what investors or traditional investors are looking for is a couple of things. First, they're looking for, does this person just is this person smart and do they know what they're doing? Do they actually have operational experience running a large enterprise? Do they actually have investing experience, looking at deals, being creative in ways to structure a deal, finance one? So there's almost like a technical kind of competency and skill set that they're hoping someone's going to be able to bring to the table, either being successful in finding and making an acquisition of a business, or at least in the operating. And fortunately for me, I had to kind of presented myself as, look, I have a bit of both, more on the operating side. I have some of the investing experience. But I kind of have the skill set one would need. And also I think of myself as, one where my skill set is leading large teams. It's what I used to do. I used to build teams, lead them, deploy them in different organizations, solve problems. So I think there was that element like this guy's a pretty mature candidate, and he could be really good at running an organization. The second thing too is they had to believe that I had the like a stomach of steel to go through this process. Frankly, they're like, do you actually understand how miserable this process is going to be? Like, it sounds okay, it's going to be great when you're maybe a CEO and you actually make the acquisition. Even then, it's still going to be tough. But before that, are you going to be comfortable with dealing with ambiguity and uncertainty and feeling like an imposter and feeling like you're not seeing as much progress as you'd like to for an unpredefined, for at least 2 years? Like, can you handle the kind of uncertainty that it takes to just do something like that and take that leap of faith? So what they're looking for is like, do you actually understand how painful this process is? And it's not a walk in the park. And we don't want to back someone who has like a glittering resume only for them to crumble at the first sign of rejection, or kind of weakness. So they're looking at, do you understand this model? Have you spoken to a lot of people? So I was able to kind of demonstrate to them, look, you couldn't have picked someone better than myself to have studied it. Having, I had my profs who literally wrote the book on entrepreneurship and through acquisition. Gone to a million conferences. I've met nearly 100 people to be talking about this. So all that to kind of to your point earlier, Gord, of building up that confidence, right? If I felt that kind of insecurity, it's like, okay, let's find ways of kind of fixing that hole, right? So that was the second element, and the third is, do we believe that you have like an edge, alpha, let's say, when it comes to this approach? Do you have a thesis for what kinds of businesses you'd like to be acquiring? And in my case, it's broadly defined as infrastructure. So it includes healthcare and education services. So that's social infrastructure, but looking at other broad infrastructure businesses like housing, energy, construction, transport, etc. And I had a strong thesis for why I thought this space is interesting. I was able to tie it back to the kind of work I did when I was in consulting and investing, etc. And another element was, okay, just me as a person, Petros, you seem like you're a pretty personable guy. You can get along with with just about anyone or any stranger, and rapidly build that trust with an owner, or an investment banker or broker, to convince them to sell you a business, right? So they're trying to figure out what's your edge, and what's going to make you stand out from the rest of all these other capital allocators in acquiring a business at the end of the day. So I had won out on that, I think, and I also have a unique edge in wanting to commit to providing all employees and any future acquisition, a bit of the upside, and having an employee ownership plan of sorts. So still trying to figure that out, but it's something I'm currently studying at the business. I studied in the business school. I'm writing cases and doing research at the business school on this topic, but all this together of like competency, a stomach of steel and strong conviction, plus you actually have an edge here. That kind of package was compelling enough for me to raise. But I'd say really what helped me kind of get the business win as well was not only just me, but actually how I executed in fundraising as well. I think that kind of helped a ton.
There's so much in here to unpack. And like I would have mentioned in our pre-interview, I've got a thing I call the anatomy of a win. Funny, I don't know why I wanted to hang out with you like on a Tuesday afternoon when your guts of steel. There's some.
Yeah.
I see you zen on a mountain, trying to, because it's not all sunshine and roses. I don't mean to dig into that too much, but the idea, the anatomy of a win, anyway, is we find out. So the win. I'm going to ask you to redefine the win in sort of a sentence. That's one. But
Yeah.
then we're going to look at the strategy, work plan, people, operations, and results behind the win. So in one sentence, how would you describe the win? Just to recap for us.
Yeah. In one sentence, I was able to fundraise the budget needed for me to get this fund off the ground, and more importantly, have more offers than I could handle with. So I was oversubscribed.
Oversubscribed based on what you described.
Yeah.
Whatever, there's 4 or 5 major things in there, the way you sold yourself, oversubscribed. You've got these investors, they want to invest in you. And now they want to see you take it all the way through for a couple reasons. One, I think they probably want to see you be successful because they're betting on you to a certain degree, but also they would like a significant return on their investment because all investors do. And they would have their own thesis on why they've invested in you and why this is of value. Funny enough, we could dig into the Harvard angle and the global angle. There's something really interesting behind all of that too, again, in this non-traditional approach to sort of getting your fund started before the business is there. But we know that business is coming sometime soon. That's really neat. What was the strategy for you? So the vision, mission, values, goals
Yeah.
behind wanting to do it this way to get this win. How would you describe that?
So if I understand your question of just kind of like how did I materialize and strategize to actually get this win and make it happen? I think for starters, I leaned heavily on my network initially before I'd kind of put myself out there, right? So one of my close classmates in business school, he actually worked for one of the largest kind of search fund investors that's out there. So I was like, man, talk to me. Give me the lowdown on kind of what is it exactly you guys are looking for in someone to pitch themselves here and to be a successful candidate that actually raises. So leaned heavily on, him getting feedback early on of just like be an honest, sober second set of eyes to be reviewing my materials, my pitch. Can you help me introduce me to some of your senior partners that might be interested in pitching? And that went a really long way of just kind of asking for help, frankly, just from others of just, can you make introductions? So that was number one. I'd say number two is I was really thoughtful about sequencing of my strategy as well. When it comes to fundraising, I just had an innate sense that you want to build a sense of FOMO, which is a fear of missing out, right? And what you want to do is you want to make sure you want to add a bit of pressure on someone needing to act. Like I even see it now, for instance, sometimes I'll get deals that kind of come across my inbox. And if there isn't a clear timeline or if there isn't a clear sense of like others getting in the process, I kind of put that deal on the back burner. I said, I'll get to it. I got to prioritize the other ones that are kind of demanding my attention. So I just worked in securing, one or two yeses from really large investors before I actually kind of broadly went to market. So I had one from my friend's investment firm, and another that I just made connections and just built a good relationship with the people at this firm. And I had built a good relationship for like the at least 8 months prior to actually when I wanted to fundraise. I wasn't sure I was going to do this 100%, but I thought, why not? You never know where a relationship will take you, and it worked out. Built a strong.
So the strategy is you lever your relationships. Do you know what I mean? In sort of that right way, you create FOMO. There's something in there, and that's a confident thing to do, right? This is not right. This is a confident thing to do that you're talking about. There's something about the vision and you. There's the secret sauce in here. If you had to describe that, how would you describe it?
Well, the secret sauce in me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think what helped was having the confidence to the confidence to wait out and reaching out to other investors. So when I was fundraising, it was called off cycle. I was a little bit late relative to when most people would be fundraising during the year, just because I had other competing priorities at the time. So with every day that comes with me delaying reaching out an email to an investor, there's a risk that they might already have deployed all their capital for the year. But I had kind of the confidence of like, nope, just get the two big ones to say yes, and then we'll go to everyone else. And not only when I go to everyone else, I want to say you have 2 weeks to decide. Are you in? You're out. If you want to have a call, that's fine. But there was an innate like self confidence I had of just you're gonna like. And some people said, look, this timeline is too short for us. I'm like, that's okay, all good. Like it is what it is, and
And
being
that FOMOs it up, right? When you can speak with that language. And funny when I heard 100 in there, 100 somebodies, like back to that thing, like when you're talking about all these people that you've spoken to
yeah,
get your premise to go, you would have been iterating from one call to the next. So
yep,
maybe
oh yeah,
maybe it
absolutely,
was 4 weeks, then it was 2 weeks, and you create this urgency. Wow, there's so much that's really interesting. So we've got a strategy behind kind of the way to get this done,
yep.
and we're hearing already. Which step two for me in the anatomy of a win is to talk really about the work plan. And
Yeah.
you're describing that a little bit. You're saying,
Yeah.
what I got started. What was the time from sort of start to the win? Was it an 18 months, a
Oh
year?
gosh. I mean, there's different ways of slicing it. Like all the relationship building I had done, it was effectively a year leading up to it, right? Like all that, and again, it's not. I had a sense that I might do this, but I wasn't entirely sure. But I still built the relationships anyways because I was like, learn more. You never know where things are going to come out. I had investors at the time approaching me, being like, "I think you'd be really good at this. Like, you should really think about it." And I didn't do it more of it at that time. But I'd say all that really was kind of like a year's worth. But really, from when I like pen to paper, putting my pitch deck together, doing calls, was probably a total of 2.5 months. But that FOMO period was, I got my investors in. That took around 2 weeks, the main ones, and then I made the call to proposals for everybody else. That took 2 weeks. You're in, you're out. And then I had my own process of saying, no, I'm going to vet you guys. Actually, I'm going to do reference calls. I want to understand the people you've backed and if they like you, and see if you're a good fit for me on my cap table. I think most people treat this like a one-way street. They're just happy for any capital that they get. But I just made it clear to folks like, look, I'm going to have a standard for what I want to see on for investors that I work with. And I think that only added to the FOMO, right? There's folks responded well to the self confidence that I think I was kind of projecting and putting out there, which is, wow, this guy has a hardcore timeline. He actually wants to vet, you know, us and do reference calls on us, which is kind of the, you don't normally hear of. It sounds like he's pretty prudent. He'll probably be a good searcher. Like, great, let's invest in him. So I think that's kind of what worked well for me.
I love it. The I'm going to vet you guys.
Yeah,
I'm going to vet the folks that are giving me the money. I'm going to say I'm going to just say if people heard that alone as they're going to raise for themselves, that would
yeah,
be a huge lesson. Because
yeah,
I'm thinking it would be one of those things where that rolled off your tongue for the first time, where you
yeah,
might be a bit trepidated. I think I'm just guessing. Like I know you've got your premise or whatever, but that idea of like it's a two-way street, super valuable. So we hear the strategy, we know kind of what it took. There was that year in the making, and then the 2.5 months sprinting. Really, that's really quite rapid, I would think. But there was all that prep time to kind of get it done. So now we know the what, who, and the when a little bit. The third step in there is whenever anybody gets a win, there's if we did the full stakeholder map, and I could take you back here Deloitte days, the whiteboards would fly out, and we would map literally every person along the way. But I love the highlights in here
yeah.
because how would you describe the major players in getting this win, and what were their roles and what were their attitudes? We've heard a lot about your attitude in terms of, you building up your confidence and getting that to go forward. And then there's your investors who are investing in you, so we know a little bit about them. But what are the highlights for the people along the way that you can sort of point out for us?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, let's break down the different stakeholders. So that would be, investors, obviously, the people that I was chasing and who they were chasing me. So, and those that said yes, those that said no, those that I said no to, just maybe because it wasn't a good fit. And the other stakeholders were my friends and personal networks, like which we had discussed, which went a huge way, and like none of this would have really been possible without them, frankly, of just understanding how this works and just getting me connected to the right people, and doing that relationship building early on, not doing it when I needed it, doing it when I didn't need it. I think that's the thing with relationship building and networking. The second you start doing it when you actually need it, you're almost too late, and trying to do it before. So the like my friends who were in the space was clutch. My wife, I'd say that's pretty important. There was like a period of uncertainty where she's like, you know, I have this guy here who amazing CV, but he's broke as hell, and like, we're, you graduated, you're turning down job offers that are super lucrative in the U.S., in Canada, left, right, and center, and you're trying to take a bet on yourself. Like, okay, I support you. So that was tough, especially when I got the other offers, because right before I'd fundraise, some folks had reached out, and I put some feelers out there, and it's like, okay, like that was another nice kind of confidence boost of like, if this doesn't work out, I think I can at least land something else, which is great. So
So we're hearing really, you've got these people on the family side, they're helping you out at certain moments along the way, a supportive sort of spouse, along with these friends that you've had along the way. You've built those relationships in a smart manner over time with that, again, really good insight into don't go looking for a relationship when you need it. Take the time and build that out. I don't know that a lot of people have that kind of patience with the sort of here now type of approach that so many people take. So we've gotten through the strategy, the work plan, the people. The fourth step I love to look at is operationally. There are some things in play here, like when you're going to raise money. What are sort of the I'm going to say if I say regulation standards, paperwork, due diligence in a sense that needs to be done. Any highlights in that sort of realm that made this win occur?
Yeah, it's a good question. The only thing that kind of comes to mind was like I was like, I don't know how what kind of pitch deck do you put together for something like this? Where it's not like I can put together some financial statements and projections on like the attractive, like this is a pitch on you betting on me, this horse that is Petros, that's going to do an amazing job out here. So from an operational standpoint, what I had to do was just reach out to people, and be like, do you have templates of what sort of pitch like kind of looks like, and the way to tell the story as well. Like it's easy for me to kind of break down to you what I thought made me an attractive candidate to raise a fund. But before that, I was like, what are all the different components and pieces? Even though I studied this in school, I got connected to people who connected me with the right guy who's like the big search fund investor in Canada, and he's like, here are some template documents. Here's documents I can comfortably share with you that gives you a sense of what people put together. I was like, oh, this is interesting. Like this is what they're looking for, and I'm like, okay, great. I can work with this, and I'm actually going to do my own version. I saw what was put together, and I was like, oh, it's just like a really boring 50-page Word doc that's put together. I'm like, oh, I'm a consultant. I'm used to operating in PowerPoint. I'm going to put something a little slicker, and that feels a bit more me. And I put, and as kind of silly as that might sound or non-material, it made a big difference because people are like, oh, this is new. Like I typically just get a Word doc. Like this is a really spiffy material you've whipped up, and it shows that you've put in effort and thoughtfulness. You're hitting all the core ingredients that you need to, but you've also added in your own flavor, which helped me stood out quite a bit.
Congratulations. So the pitch deck was sort of this fundamental, uh, tool that had to be part of the operation. You had to sort of get it right. And then again, what I'm hearing, there's secret sauce in this. It's like, well, I saw the way it was done, but I'm going to break the mold. I started out doing this thing. I'm going to break the mold. Like there's a Petros something here that, again, good Canadians, we don't brag enough, but there's an element in here of secret sauce that, again, is hitting at so many different moments along the way when we unpack it in this way. And again, we can go more into sort of the operational points where money changed hands and that kind of thing. And I'm sure that's more sort of standard. But then that's so we got through the strategy, the work plan, the people, the operations, talked about that. The final thing is, how do you measure the results? What are the sort of the quantitative? I'm going to say quantitative. You raise the money. Like there's that part of it sort of clearly. Is that the big result that you like to measure, or what are you measuring? What data or what qualitative things are you measuring as well?
I mean, yeah, I'd say there's two goals. There's A, you raise the money, but B, how much more money did you kind of leave on the table that you weren't able to accept, right? So that was another kind of, might be a bit of a vanity metric, but I thought it's good to know, because let's say I come across this investment and opportunity that I want to do tomorrow, and maybe one of my existing investors isn't interested in participating in the deal. Knowing that I have all these other investors, that I'm in good relationships with, who like me, who I wasn't able to kind of accommodate at the time, just works in my favor because it just makes it that much more easier for me to kind of raise any equity capital to invest in a deal. So those were the two financial metrics. I'd say the other important qualitative metric here that this was a win was like, do I actually like these people? You know, I think in all seriousness, I think there are folks who fundraise and, you know, I think some folks might have a mentality of like, you know, beggars can't be choosers. I gotta take what I gotta take, and I'm stuck with this firm or fund or person that I'm not really enthusiastic about. And I just made sure to really like and see value in all of my investors in some shape or form. You know, others might be more sage wisdom advice providers. Others might be a lot more hands-on, supporting you on a deal. Others might provide you lots of resources and guides that get you started up. So I think I was pretty fortunate in feeling like qualitatively I'd kind of gotten like a fantastic cap table of investors to work with.
I think you know where this is going to go, and you've known where this is going to go for a long time. There's a continuity of spirit and values. Funny, I want to be one of your employees in the shareholder thing. Do you know what I mean? Like, you can hear that started a long time ago.
Yeah.
You can hear that as you got into this, even though it was a bit rocky, say, getting into, well, I'm going to try it, and then I'm going to really do it. And then I'm going to do that with everybody I deal with along the way, including the investors. And I'm not going to treat it in a typical manner. I'm going to treat it in a Petros way, which will then speak to when you actually do make your acquisition and you get into running something over that duration that meets your thesis. And those employees are going to benefit from it as well. They're going to feel that values-driven culture that you've created, obviously, for yourself and your family and the people all around you. What an exciting time.
Yeah, thanks. It's funny. I actually, you know, you kept bringing out like, what's that Petros magic quality of sorts? And I think what's helped me a lot is, and something I frankly don't appreciate or realize as much myself, is a bit of that self-confidence that you and I were talking about, of just certain choices I made, of being picky with who my investors are, of choosing kind of do things my own way. Like, for instance, this element of, you know, committing to provide folks, all employees, some sense of ownership in the business, super unorthodox. And frankly, I've had my profs and other investors be like, I think that's a terrible idea. I don't think it's going to work. I don't think there's going to be much value add from it. And, you know, just, and there's still that conviction I had of just, I think this just kind of feels like the right thing for me, of what I want to do. And screw it. If you're not interested in that approach, then, you know, good riddance. You know, and there are other parts with my strategy of my fund, of just how we want to go about our process for searching other investors who I said, like, this isn't a fit for us. And I was like, okay, that's fine. And it's just having that confidence to be like, you know, if we have conviction in what we're trying to do and we have strategy, then to the best extent we can, let's try to stick with it. Let's not be foolhardy and not be iterative or learn from our lessons, but if we have conviction, let's just try and hold on to our guns for a bit and actually just ride it out. So that self-confidence.
Super inspiring. If we have the conviction, we can get things done. I think we're about chapter 2 in this long book that you're writing right now, somewhere, right? We got through chapter 1, chapter 2 somewhere in there. Can't wait to hear how the other chapters go. It'll be fun to keep up with your story and then see where all this good foundation pays off for you, including, I can see the smiling employees.
Yeah.
Right? We can see it. We can see, like, it's happening.
Yeah.
That's super exciting. Well, how lucky to get inspired by your story. Thank you for sharing in such detail about what was happening there. If people needed to get in touch with you, what would be the best way for them to reach out?
Absolutely. You can go to alpinevistascapital.com, and there you'll find my email address and ways to get in touch. And, you know, like I'd mentioned at the top of the show, always looking for acquisition opportunities where we're trying to buy out a business in its entirety or majority of it, from ideally a retiring business owner who's wanting to maybe move on. And if there's anyone in your, you know, group of listeners or yourself that knows of somebody who might be thinking about wanting to sell, regardless of where in Canada or the US, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me. we have a very attractive finder's fee for anyone that kind of leads us to an acquisition. It's order of magnitude $100,000 to $200,000 plus, depending on size. But yeah, would really love it if folks can
Well, and I saw your website. That's laid out in plain language. It's funny.
yeah.
It's not like handshake stuff. They're
No,
like, well,
we
no,
have all
if you do this for us, we're going to do that thing
yeah.
for you. And you can hear from the values driven point that you're coming from that if it all works out, someone is going to get that in the end. And we're not going to do it on that way because it's the Petros way of sorts. That's funny. We would get the Petros way. We could sort of get into defining that for you. Well, super inspiring. I really appreciate all your time. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much. It's been really fun getting to know you, and also this has been great for me. It's just kind of a nice moment in time for me to reflect on kind of where I'm at and kind of what I've done to date, which is nice.
Well, the lucky part, I'll just jump in about my thesis is that I use this structure to help leaders like you reverse engineer their past wins and then use this structure to get more wins in the future. So on the right day, I'm in a half day or a full day with a full leadership team,
Yeah.
and we're going crazy on in-depth rabbit hole, and we exhaust this because I think what happens is leaders don't, without this type of reflection, just because I'm seeing it over and over again, they're not taking the time to reflect in this manner necessarily to really check those things along the way. And yet there's all these Olympic athlete moments that are happening along the way that if they can slow down and just forget it, it's not modesty, immodesty. It really is about what worked. What can you take out of there that you want to carry forward? What do you drop from the past in this structured manner? And that's certainly the premise that I have in the work that I do that leads to, when I call it the anatomy of win, that's the tip of the iceberg for what I call the executive planning system. And that's that's my 650 pages underneath for my thesis that I take organizations through. So I'm glad to hear you enjoyed going through this process because that's what I like to take people through. There's so many wins in this conversation. I can't wait to vet some investors. Like that would be just that would be a cool feeling, right? And we know someone who did it. So how'd you do it? And you pulled it off. That's just great.
Well, I was going to say, you know, I'm a management consultant by trade, so I'm a sucker for frameworks, good frameworks.
Right?
I really like the one that you put forward, and yeah, no, I'm going to be using it going forward for sure.
Well, sounds good. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Have a good one, Gord. Bye.
Believe in yourself, connect with the right people, and have a stomach of steel. That is how Petros Kusmu started Alpine Vistas Capital, and that is how he's going to continue to succeed. Thank you, Petros, for sharing your inspiring win. And if you enjoyed listening to this episode, then make sure to check out our other episodes, which include how to build a cutting-edge software solution to disrupt the recruitment industry, how CEO Terry Davis is winning with profound talent. And if you and your leadership team want to learn the anatomy of a win so you can reverse engineer your past wins in a structured way to get more business wins in the future, then check out our workshops at executivewins.com/workshops to learn more. You can also subscribe to the Executive Wins monthly newsletter to stay up to date on the podcast, live events, education opportunities, and more. Visit executivewins.com/newsletter to sign up. And if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe, and share it with a fellow leader. And don't forget to check out our resources and links in the show notes. And keep listening to the Executive Wins podcast for more inspiring wins that will help you grow yourself, your team, and your entire business. Thanks for listening to the Executive Wins podcast. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe as we bring you more inspiring wins from outstanding leaders so you can grow your business.